Hey, welcome to the conversation that's as diverse as the dogs that we adore. This is Gundogs and Guard Dogs, ultimate podcast dedicated to talking sense about dogs with Les Graham and Ross McCarthy. They work with all breeds of dog, but one specialises in Gundogs and the other prefers Guard Dogs. No flashy trends or social media hype here, just tried and true knowledge that stands the test of time. They bring you valuable insights and honest conversations about the social predator you share your home with. So here we go. About 45 minutes of Gundogs, Guard Dogs, good dogs, some maybe not so good dogs, and a dash of gossip.
Hello, me and Ross are looking at each other to say, who's going to start?
Normally we have a little brief discussion, don't we, before we start, to say, are you introducing it or am I? No, good morning, Les.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. You're looking very bright and sunny today.
And I'm probably too hot. I've got a jumper on and it's not actually as cold as it was. It's been 0 for all week, and I think it's nipped up to 10. And I'm still
10 degrees. Oh, no, what? You must be sweltering at that temperature.
I am.
Not used to that in Scotland, are you?
No, I'm not.
No, not. So today, it's not just you and I.
It's not. It's not.
How exciting. We've got a guest joining us.
And I've been quiet for almost longer than I've ever been quiet in my entire life.
I know, we were trying to see how long you could hold out, Jonathan.
Not very long.
So, Ross, would you like to do the honours?
Yeah, so we are joined by Jonathan Self from Honey's Natural Dog Food. We thought it'd be really interesting to have a chat. Both Les and I are, I'm a bit of a raw food zealot. Les perhaps slightly less so, but we're really passionate about species appropriate feeding. So we thought it'd be really interesting to have a chat to Jonathan about raw food and also about Honey's, because they're quite a unique company. So welcome, Jonathan.
Well, thank you very much.
And how on earth did you start? How did you get into raw feeding? How did Honey's come about?
I think all through my youth, I had all these different jobs. I kind of sold double glazing. I sold something called a warm water udder washer into farms. I was a barman. I cleaned bedpans in a geriatric ward. But all the time, I think dog food was calling to me, and it took me a few decades to get there. But I was farming in Ireland and also writing as a journalist, and we were fostering dogs. We usually had about 9 or 10 dogs around the place, and our vet who came in to see the farm animals kept saying to me, you must switch your dogs to a raw food diet. He kept explaining about species appropriate feeding, and it was kind of slightly in one ear out the other, and I was like, yeah, but they'll choke on the bones. And he'd say, no, they won't choke on the bones, it'll be fine. And then I'd say, what about the bacteria? He'd say, you don't have to worry about the bacteria. Anyway, one day he virtually brought the ingredients and said, look, feed the dogs these chicken wings, see what happens. And the dogs absolutely loved them. So based on that, we started feeding our own dogs a raw food diet. And I started helping other people around the area who had lots of ingredients because, if you're farming, you think nothing of wringing a chicken's neck, or I was always taking, a pig down to the butcher or whatever. We had a little local butcher who did all the killing and abattoir, he had a little abattoir in the back. And then I had an acre that needed clearing, and someone said to me the most effective way we were running an organic farm was to get pigs. So I bought 20 pigs, young pigs, and they were in this walled garden, and they were growing up, and it turned out they weren't practicing safe sex, Ross. It was a disaster and a lack of education on my part. I should have taught them. And we suddenly had about 120 pigs, and I became a pig farmer. I didn't really mean to become a pig farmer, and I fell in love with the pigs. I don't know if you've ever spent any time with them, but as intelligent as dogs. They love to play soccer. I got them a soccer ball. We used to kick the ball around. I make the old joke, I could never get them to teach learn the offside rule, but they were fantastic. And I used to put ombre solaire on their backs to stop them getting sunburn. They had a place to sort of rub in the mud, but I often felt that people eating my pork would be saying to themselves, this tastes of suntan lotion. In the crackling. So anyway, I was in love with the pigs. And then one day overnight, I just suddenly thought, I can't kill them. It was an appalling thing for a farmer to find. But, and so I stopped eating meat, and then I slightly got fed up with having my elbows up to kind of up to my elbows in offal and kind of mince all the time because I was feeding so many dogs. I started to look around for someone else. It's a long story, but I'm sorry. But I started to look around for someone else who would make dog food using the same kind of farm welfare standards that I had, because now I wasn't eating meat. I was very concerned. I didn't want factory farmed meat. And also I was really conscious that the quality of the meat determines the nutrition. So if you use factory farmed meat that's pumped full of chemicals and antibiotics, it's obviously less good for the dogs eating it. And I couldn't find anyone. So I was kind of forced to start my own company in order to not make the food myself, but be able to get someone else to make it for me. So that's really how we began. We never did any advertising. It all spread by word of mouth, and we always had a policy that everyone always had my phone number and email. Nowadays, just the email because I couldn't answer all the calls. So it was always a very personal company. So that's kind of how I got into it. It's a long story, and it grew entirely. Like we feed about 5,000 dogs a month and maybe 6,000 dogs a month. But they're all friends of friends. They've all come because they've either met one of the team or they know a customer, or we do no advertising and no marketing. We're slightly unusual in that, but it works for us. It works for us. So there you go. There's a long answer.
I'm surprised you didn't continue with the udder washer. I mean, that sounds
the warm water udder washer. Well. Yeah, nowadays, of course, all farming's become very mechanized, and but back then, everything was. I was visiting dairy parlors that hadn't changed in 100 years, and it was. And what you do is, well, anyway, I won't go into
it. I've got a couple of questions for you from that little lot. What kind of pigs did you have?
We had white. God, we're now talking about 20 years ago. Were they called white race, perhaps, and crossed with something else?
Were they really huge? Because
they were big. Yeah, they were big, and
ones that'll come up to about here, can't you? They're absolutely massive.
They were large. They were large, and they were unruly as well because they were used to living a completely free range existence. I sold them to another organic farmer who rang up the following day and complained. He said, "Your pigs aren't fence trained." And I said, "No, because they haven't had to be, because they were living in a walled garden, and then we had another walled area." And he was very cross about it, but they were used to doing their own thing. They could wander anywhere. They were. And I got a call from I was told I had to tag all their ears. So in the end, I rang back this person from the Ministry of Agriculture and said, "Fine, you come down and tag them, because I can't get any of them to stand still long enough." As soon as I did the first one, the rest were like, "We're not getting involved in this." So,
we had some pigs where I used to keep the horses, and when they came in, if they bodged their way through into the indoor stables, everyone would be like straight up on the walls because they still had tusks.
Oh, blimey.
Flying down the corridor where the stables were, and they were absolutely huge. And they just knocked you out of the way. You didn't stand a chance.
They've got a great sense of humour, pigs. I had one who used to sneak up behind me and tip me over and then laugh. I mean, she just thought it was hysterical.
And is that why you stopped eating meat? Because you discovered sort of the personalities of the...
Exactly. I began to see how intelligent they were, and I just thought, I can't do it. And then that led, I stopped eating pork initially, and I thought, well, don't really like wringing chickens' necks and plucking them anymore. So, but it's a very personal decision. And the rest of my family, some of them eat meat, some of them don't, some of them only eat fish. I think everyone's got to make their own decision, and I don't ever feel the need to to persuade anybody, if you see what I mean. It's not.
I mean, just on the back of that, just briefly, and so obviously veganism and vegetarianism now is really quite popular, probably more popular than it's ever been, isn't it? Quite trendy, I suppose. Why is it important that people feed their dogs on kind of a raw meat diet, so to speak, when veganism or vegetarianism is so
Ross,
popular?
I'm going to talk more pigs.
We can come back to pigs, and I'll give you my pig imitation in a minute. We're on to serious stuff now, Les. Well, it's a very interesting question. There's so many different answers to that. I think the first answer is that I believe that dogs and cats, as it happens, are really vital to society, that we, if you look back 100 years ago, 150 years ago, people lived with animals all around them. Even if you lived in a city, there were horses, and, people tended to keep animals and fowl and stuff in their back gardens and all the rest of it. But over the last 100 years, we've got further and further away from ever spending time with animals, and the only animals we spend time with now are our pets. And I think that dogs and cats are vital to society, and they bring such pleasure and comfort to people. So I start with the point that if we didn't have dogs and cats and other pets, people would have no contact with the natural world. Lots of people would have no contact with the natural world. And we all know the benefits of that. So if we're going to keep them, it's our duty to give them the best possible diet. So the best possible diet should be species appropriate. You wouldn't keep a panda and expect it to eat McDonald's. You wouldn't, you feed an animal what it should be eating. And in the case of dogs, it's obviously a raw meat, raw bone diet with some vegetable matter and some fruit. So it's our moral duty to feed them what's appropriate to them. And there's another side to it, which is that because I'm vegetarian and vegan, effectively, I worked very hard. I thought, maybe we could replicate a raw diet, as it were, without meat, so we could do a meat-free version of it. So we set up a very, very long test program. We created all these recipes with the help of vets. And what we found was that half the dogs seemed to do okay on it, but half the dogs lost an enormous amount of weight and condition. And so obviously, as a commercial business, you can't be saying to people, try our dog food. Half the dogs won't do well on it and half will. That's not really a very good promotional thing, but also it would be irresponsible. And then we really began to look into it. And I'm not good at science, but there's a long list of things that are in meat and bone that you simply can't get from a non-meat diet. So it's unhealthy. And deficiencies in dogs take 2 years and longer to show up. So, some deficiencies obviously take less, but it can take a long time for a deficiency in a diet to show up. So it's our duty to feed them that diet. And I feel it's a moral duty. So that's where I come from it.
No, I agree with you completely, obviously. But now you've got, with the vets and things, a lot of people find it very difficult. They'll go to their vet. A lot of people feed kibble. I don't know quite when that started, but there's kind of this revolution that dogs need a complete balanced diet in every single meal that they're served. And then, although raw feeding now is much more popular than it was 15, 20 years ago, still a lot of the vets are persuading clients that kibble is the best form of food, aren't they?
Yeah, they're persuasive. Kibble was really invented in 1860 by a chap called James Spratt, who was actually, I think he was an electrician, if I remember right. He was an early electrician or electrical engineer. Anyway, he was an American, and he came up with the idea of using waste ingredients, so things that couldn't go into the human food chain anymore, and turning them into a dog food. So he was able to buy the ingredients for absolutely nothing, and then obviously put a premium on it. And he started in 1860. By 1861, he was employing vets to give him endorsements and say what a healthy, complete food this was. And it was made of kind of blood and low-level grain that couldn't be used, and so it was rubbish. And so that's how it started. And although the formula has changed a bit, it hasn't changed that much, and it's still marketed the same way. So you're right. I think vets unfortunately have been often educated by they do half a day or a day on canine and feline nutrition. It's usually taught to them by someone who comes from a food company like Hills or Nestle or someone. So they're obviously not getting a very open opinion of it. And I think that's what's caused it. But as you say, the movement has changed. 15 years ago, hardly anyone fed raw. Nowadays, I don't think there's a veterinary practice in the country that doesn't have a good rump of raw feeders as part of it. And I think the word is spreading. I think it is a movement, and people are beginning to see the difference in your dog. That's really the test, isn't it? When you, and I know both of you do raw feed, but you see how much healthier the dogs are. They live longer. They've got fantastic coats. And even with major health problems, they're often cleared up by change of diet. I mean, our vet, our first chief veterinary surgeon, unfortunately retired, but he used to say 9 out of 10 visits to do with the dog were all diet related to his practice, which is fairly serious.
I think the revolution's well on the way. I can remember doing a video on raw feeding in, I think it was either 2012 or 2013 with Gundogs, and saying, just because your Gundog's on raw food doesn't mean it's gonna pick the pheasant up, go under a tree and eat it. So I did a big campaign on that and had the dogs retrieving like duck necks, chicken wings. Do you remember we played with the video, Ross? Do you remember the bit of beef jerky?
Beef jerky, wasn't it? Yeah, it was.
And I think now a lot more Gundog people are feeding raw, but at the time, people were like, oh, you shouldn't be feeding raw to a working gun dog. It's ridiculous. And so I put a lot of stuff out. I've still got videos. I think I sent you one of Spud retrieving a duck neck from years ago. And it just, I think seeing dogs retrieving raw food really helped change people's mindsets in that I can feed, give my dog a duck wing and then go and get the retriever pheasant, and it's not going to sit down and eat it. There's a lot of myths, isn't there?
You still hear a lot, don't you? People say to you, I don't want to feed raw because it'll give the dog a taste for blood. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas I would have thought, if you're feeding kibble, that would probably, the dog would be so blooming hungry and desperate for food, that might give the dog a taste of blood rather than
exactly.
Something real. So when did your vet tell you, Jonathan, to feed raw? Because we still have problems now with vets saying, he must have been really
he was well ahead of the curve. He must have started telling me in about 2003, I'd say 2002, something like that. And it took him a couple of years for it to sink in. And we started Honeys in 2008. So we've been at it for 15 years, and there were really only 3 companies offering a complete raw food back then. So whereas now there's probably, 110, 120 companies in the UK, I'd say, offering a raw food option. So it'll give you a feel for how the market has grown. But we've stuck to our knitting. So I'm a farmer, and I, as you heard, I'm very concerned about farm animal welfare. But I also know, because we test the nutritional value of the meat, so we can see that even on the free range and pasture fed, that things like zinc are dropping, and that's over the 15 years we've seen it drop, and that's because the soil is not as good as it was 15 years ago. So it's really, really important that as much as possible to use quality ingredients. And although you might be surprised for me to say it, we have a fact sheet. We got a veterinary nutritionist called Dr. Gray, Charlie Gray, to write us a fact sheet up for people who found raw feeding too expensive. And she says, and you might be surprised for me to say, it's better to feed a bit of kibble and really good raw food once a week than it is to do nothing, that you should do what you can afford. And I think she's right. I think you've got to be practical. Not everyone can afford it, especially if you've got several large dogs. It's quite a bill. And even if you use a low quality ingredient, it's still quite a bill. So you do have to come up with compromises, and I'm pragmatic about it. But even a small amount of raw will do the dogs good.
Yeah. What about you were saying the soil's becoming deficient. So what's the plan going forward for that in relation to making sure that the nutritional value stays high? Because I lived in New Zealand for a while, and they don't have selenium in the soil. There's no selenium in New Zealand. So everyone, when I was a kinesiologist, it was always, make sure you have a Brazil nut every day to make sure you get your selenium, because you're not going to get it from your food. What'll happen, or what'll change, if the soil keeps getting depleted?
Well, I think I don't know. That's a fairly big question to do with the whole agriculture industry.
I'm really interested in.
But I think as far as dog food is concerned, already I think we are probably one of half a dozen companies that don't add supplements. Yeah. So I believe that, as I do with humans, that if you're healthy, or you don't have some specific deficiency, you should get all your nutrition from your food. You shouldn't be taking supplements. But it's not always possible. And if you're going to have a supplement, it should be a food-based supplement rather than a synthetic laboratory created one. But I'd say what we'll see is, in fact, we know that with the majority of dog food companies, they're having to supplement because the food ingredients doesn't have it. We don't, but we might say, if you've got a particular joint problem, excuse me, or the dog's got some specific problem, you might say, well, it would be good to give them some cod liver oil or some sap or whatever it is, but we would do that according to a health issue, but not as universal thing. Overall, I'm afraid to say, I think agriculture is in a pretty rotten state. But that's a bigger issue. The trouble is, it's seen as an investment. It's not seen as family farms are closing down, smaller farms are shut down, they're driven out, and it becomes huge, massive businesses run from the city, and all they care about is money. So,
No,
I suppose that whole
I find
sort of
it really
vegetarian vegan thing has an effect, doesn't it, on sales of meat and all the rest of it. And there's a huge percentage of the population that don't eat meat.
Well, also working in abattoirs, they're finding it very difficult to get people to work in them. No one wants to do it anymore. So there's a huge shortage of abattoir workers. We go and visit our abattoirs. We like to know what happens to the animals after they come out of the farm. So we visit all our farmers, all our producers, and we also visit the abattoir, because it's pointless raising an animal beautifully and then letting it languish for a week somewhere in trucks and, the rest of it. So
I honestly don't know how I'd feel about visiting an abattoir, but I have seen, because I go shooting, I've seen them, I don't know what it's called, where they take the deer skins off, like in one piece. Is just amazing. And you see them checking, I know I'm going off topic now, but I hadn't appreciated that, like, the gamekeepers would have to check all of the organs. It's just little things that you don't appreciate because it's going in the food chain. They're checking everything to make sure that they good quality, there's no issues, there's no marks or anything on the organs. And it's quite mind-blowing, the amount of checking and double checking that goes on. So I'm assuming it'd be similar.
It's even tighter on dog food, because because what they want to do is make sure that no ingredient, because they're using rotten meat, and I mean, in America they use old pets to make dog food.
Yeah, I know. I know.
So because the quality of the ingredients that goes into like 99% of all dog food is of such poor quality, they have to, and they don't want it getting into the human food chain. So the rules are even stricter than they are, strange enough, in terms of traceability. But we have to know where every single duck comes from and what's happened to it from when it left the farm, or if it's wild, what's happened to it. And it all has to be inspected by vets before it comes to us. So
every animal, every
animal. If you go and visit, say, our chicken, the free range chicken farm we use had their own slaughterhouse, and they have a vet there. So as every animal is slaughtered, the vet inspects it to make sure that it's healthy and it isn't carrying any disease or infection. So every animal before it's slaughtered. But what happens to it after it's slaughtered is another story. So we're using everything we use. We actually run a butcher's business as well, believe it or not. So we're the only dog food company that sells such good dog food that we could sell it to humans. But in most cases, we're talking about rotten meat, bits of things like hooves and ears. That's what goes into, I won't mention any brands, but that's what the big producers are using. Testicles, eyeballs, everything, because it all counts as coming from the animal. So, and then they're boosting it up with all these artificial supplements and
Wow. No, I find the whole thing really interesting. The whole from the fork, isn't it? But from farm to dog bowl, really, I find it just really fascinating.
Exactly.
Really interesting.
Well, it must vary greatly, mustn't it, between kind of what you do at Honey's and sort of more of the processed pet foods and things, because that is not going to be the same journey, is it, from farm to dog bowl, so to speak? I mean, that's
no, it's a different journey, and it ends up, I mean, very, very differently. The way they make it is it's like there's a lot at the moment about ultra processed food. So it's basically ultra processed, and they render down all the meat and into these huge vats the size of a sort of semi-detached house, and boil it, and it turns into a kind of grey goop, and they then turn that into either kibble, or they reform it into so-called chunks of meat with fake gravy into the tin. It stinks. And then they have to add in, because it's got no nutritional value, so they have to add in all this other stuff to make it work. And it's not good for the dogs. Like, as you know, you're a raw feeder. It's just raw fed dogs are healthier. They thrive on it. So.
I find it amazing that some of the food companies, like you said about that meat, and they use colours. So you've got like a piece of carrot and a piece of pig and a big lump of meat. And that manages to kid people into thinking you're actually feeding a proper food here. You think, oh, there's a pea, that's nice. It's not a pea. It's the same crap that's in the other bit that's orange.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
Absolutely desperate.
Yeah, it is. It's very bizarre.
And do you do like as part of your food and the food that you process. Processing seems the wrong word, because we're talking about don't have processed food, but then you're processing the meat. Well, how would you describe it?
Well, I'll tell you, we get we're about to build some new kitchens, so it's very exciting at the moment. We're working, and we moved temporarily into kitchens 12 years ago, and we're still there, but we're going to refurbish them all shortly. But you're too young, both of you are too young. But when I was growing up, my mum had a mincer, so it was sort of this size, and you put stuff in, and you turned
that.
And it forced the meat through a plate so that it came out as mince. Yes. Well, we have one of those about the size of a skip, a builder's skip, and into the top of it goes, let's say, whole chickens, chicken carcasses, and it's forced through the plate, including the bones. And it's got a bit like the grinder does. It's got this screw that breaks it all down and then forces it through the plate, and it comes out. So and then we mix in the vegetables. We have another machine that's a bit like a sort of, I don't know, it reminds me of Slender Tone, actually. It sort of shakes the vegetables around. So we chop the vegetables up and we shake it all up so it's all mixed up together. And then it goes in, we pack it in a sort of, it's the same thing that they use to make salamis. It's the same sort of thing. So it comes out like looking like a sausage. So basically we add nothing. It's just raw ingredients that have obviously all been washed before we put them in. And we're basically just grinding them up, mixing them up, and putting them into packets. So that's it. Now, obviously, we have to balance. So, for example, we have to make sure that we've got the right amount of organ meat versus bone versus meat. So we're constantly monitoring it. And as you'd have gathered, we do a lot of analysis because we're so concerned about the nutritional adequacy. But we pass all the big test is the American, it's called the AAFCO, AFCO, American Association of Feed Control, something or others. They set up the standards, which are then endorsed by FEDIEF, which is the European Pet Food Association. So we do meet all their requirements in terms of offering a complete food. And we do it in a completely natural way without obviously adding in anything. So that's how it's made. It's like, it's the same way I was making it 15 years ago in the kitchen, really. It hasn't changed much. We just do it on a bigger scale.
Well, that's amazing.
It's cool, isn't it? You were saying earlier, I follow a couple of sort of the American vet nutritionists and stuff like that, like Dr. Karen Becker and things. And just going back to what you were saying about sort of feeding fresh food and things, if you can't, if money is an issue, which it is for, all of us, isn't it? You were saying that you at Honeys would help people to feed on kind of more of a budget, so to speak, that there's options for people to contact you for help or...
Well, the thing is, we put the dog first, so we're in a really fortunate position. To begin with, we'll teach anybody how to make their own food, which it's sort of like turkeys voting for Christmas, but we found it works for us. So if you ring us up and say, I've no intention of becoming a customer, but I want to switch to raw feeding, we'll give you recipes. We'll talk about your dog. We'll spend an hour on the phone. We'll send you recipes afterwards, and you can ring us up as often as you want to check that it works. And the reason we do that is that the more raw feeders there are, the better, because obviously if there's a bigger market, then some of them will come to us. But secondly, we found if we treat people well and look after the dog, they'll even if they don't become customers, they'll say, "Oh well, Honey's helped me," and people will come to us. And it's we're not wildly ambitious, so we don't have any desire to be much bigger. So we find it really works for us. So coming back to it, there's if someone comes and says, I'm on a really tight budget, we'll then work out what they can manage. And we, as I say, we've got like a 4 or 5 page fact sheet for people who, are on a tight budget. We'll take them through it and say, well, look, this would be better than doing that. This would be better than doing that. What can you manage? And with our regular customers, we also run a thing. If they hit a hard time, we'll help them out. So occasionally someone will ring up and say, look, I've lost my job, or I'm ill, or I'm retired, or whatever. And we'll then help them as best we can. I mean, it's, it's one of the advantages. The company's owned. My wife and I gave 20% of the company to the staff, so the employee is now partly employee owned. And one of the benefits of that is we're not driven by trying to make bigger profits all the time. It's more about looking after everybody. So
that is so good to hear. You don't hear it very often, do you? You don't hear it like that kind of ethics and attitude now in it. So
Unless it's self-interest, it works. It works. It's no big deal. It works. Like if you're kind to people, they're kind back to you.
Well,
if you do something for someone else, you always feel better, in my experience, than, if you don't. So, but like it works. We run a business. We are a business. We're not a charity, but it works for the business. And so we support, like, I don't want to drive a Rolls Royce. We support the family, and we support all the other families, and we look after our customers. So it is a business, but we find that works for us anyway. And,
it's like paying forward, isn't it?
Paying it forward.
I can't remember. Is it tithering? There's a term for it. I can never remember. But I know it's like tithing. It's paying forward, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which I think is a fantastic way of. I know I pay forward when I can, which is wonderful. I think it's a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. And I've been on the receiving end when I've been hard up as well, so I know it works both ways. So.
Not many businesses follow that model, do they?
No, and what a mistake they're making, in my opinion. We have such lovely customers, Ross. You have no idea. Like, they all have my email. So every morning I probably wake up to 10 or 15 emails from customers, often sending me photos of their dogs or giving me news, or sometimes sad news. They might have lost a relative, but because they're all, they've all, like, they're customers, but they've also, many of them have become friends over the years, and it definitely pays for itself. I often wonder, if you ring, I'm with Vodafone, for example, after I've waited an hour in order to get them to not do something, I just wonder how they survive. Like, it's such a nightmare. Banks are the same.
Yeah,
I think that's why customer service, it's so surprising when you get decent customer service and actually a business that's passionate about their clients and doing the right thing, because it's not. Most of life is not like that, is it? It's just frustrating being on the phone, waiting for a person to answer it, pressing buttons and everything else as a customer that's paying lots of money to a company.
It's not that when we deal with you, Ross, and it's not that way when we deal with Les.
No, not at all. No, we're very passionate about customer service.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Ross, you wanted to ask about the treats, didn't you? Before I go back on the pigs.
I know you're desperate to get back on. Ross, get your questions out of the way, Ross, because I want to talk about pigs. I was going to, because you do something. I was just going to mention you do those treats as well, don't you? Beautiful Joes, or whatever.
We do. They were started, Ross. I'm so glad you asked me about that. I can now talk and hear the sound of my own voice again. But when we started, most dog food companies, if you Pedigree, Charm, or whatever, will give away vast amounts of food to rescue centres because it's cheap for them to do it. Well, we work on a tiny margin, so we can't give away, if we give away £1 worth of food, it probably costs us 90p. So we're not in the position of Pedigree, Charm. If they give away £1 worth of food, it probably costs them threepence. So we're in a very different position. So when we started out, we were trying to think, what could we do give away food, but we're limited in what we can do. What could we do? And we were making for ourselves and for our own dogs this air dried. It's literally just liver that you air dry, that you get these little dehumidifying machines that suck all the moisture out, and dogs go absolutely crazy for them. When we first made them, we were giving them out for free just as a present. We were at the London Dog Show, and the woman next to us ran a pet shop in Essex, and she said her dog went so mad for these treats that all night he was scratching at the door, searching the room. He was certain that there were others in there, and dogs absolutely love them. And so we started doing that, and every time we sell a packet, we give a packet to a rescue home. So far, we've given away about 33,000 packets. I think it's worth about £650,000 worth of treats to about a bit under 200 rescue homes. And we now do a lamb flavour as well. So we've got lamb lung, which is much lighter. So some people, some dogs don't like it's beef liver or lamb lung, basically. But the lamb is lighter. It's easier to break. And quite a lot of behaviourists have actually said they prefer it to the liver because it's a faster sort of swallow for the dog. Sometimes with the liver it's a bit tough on their teeth and they take some time over it, which is not good if you're trying to train. So we've got both of them, and we came up with, I'm not sure if I've got one here because I haven't got any near, but we invented this little yellow tin that we shake. Usually I've got them on my desk, but someone's nicked them all. But we've got a little yellow tin that we shake, and when you shake the tin, the dogs come running. Actually, my dogs are here sleeping, so if I shake a tin now, it'll be a disaster anyway. So yeah. Oh yeah, here we go. I've got one here. So so they can't hear, but there we are, just like that. So we started doing that, and actually I noticed quite a few other companies have stolen the idea from us. But yeah, you put a few little tins and treats in that and shake it. Even pigs will come for that, I'd say.
Even pigs.
Segue the pig motif.
I'm just logging on. I haven't seen the lamb one. I haven't seen the lamb one.
When we finish, the first thing I'm going to do, Liz, is send you some lamb treats.
Oh, thank you.
For being such a good girl.
Yeah. I'm a very good girl. I am a very good girl. What do you think about if you can't go down the raw route, like home cooked diets? And the reason I'm asking is I was listening to a podcast the other day with Tim Spector.
Oh yes, I was with Tim. He sat next to me.
Say that again?
Tim and I sat next to each other at school.
Oh wow, there you go. So he was on a podcast the other day.
Like that when he was 12. He hasn't changed.
He's an interesting character, isn't he? Because he did Zoe, didn't he? The nutrition thing so you can see what your body's doing in relation to the different nutrients you put in it. But he was talking the other day on a podcast, and he was talking about the microbiome and protein, and then they got into dogs because the person who was interviewing him is mad for dogs, and he was saying, "Oh, just give them a home cooked diet and just give them scraps." And I listened to it and I thought, yeah, but dogs aren't us; they should be fed raw. And so it was really interesting listening to like an amazing human nutritionist kind of crossing over into dogs. And he said he originally thought about doing a study on the microbiome of the dog. But in the end, I think he said it was too difficult. So he changed his attention and then started going down the Zoe route. But it's just, what do you think of the home cooked diet as opposed to raw?
Well, Tim was sometimes wrong at school, and he's still wrong. but
I was listening to it and I was thinking, but you're talking about different species, and yeah, well, microbiome's one thing and the dog microbiome is completely different.
In fairness to Tim, because we know that the species appropriate food for a dog is raw food, but some dogs, there's quite a long list of conditions where you wouldn't feed a dog a raw diet. For example, if they've just had some sort of stomach surgery, or if they've got certain diseases, you might say that the food has to be cooked. So there are certainly situations when you cook the food. It's quite interesting because we run a little service called Honey's Bespoke, where we'll actually make whatever you want. It's expensive, but if you came to us and said, well, I want a cooked food, or I want a food that's made up of kangaroo and sausage, I don't know, turnips or something, we've got a little kitchen and we'll make you whatever it is you want. And we feed a lot of sick dogs, and we also feed a lot of dogs that want, their family want to give them a certain meal. So we certainly do cook food. And what's interesting is you have to give a dog almost twice as much in terms of volume when you cook it, because you've lost so much nutrition for it to get the same nutritional value from it. So cooked food needs to be about twice the amount of a raw food, which will give you a feel for issues surrounding it. But I don't think a bit of cooked food does any harm. I mean, Cosmo's at the moment asleep, is now old, and he's kind of gone off raw. Sometimes he'll eat it, sometimes he won't. I drive the family mad because I heat up the food in his kitchen stinks when I do it, because we're not usually cooking meat there, but I'll heat it up for him, or I'll pour a bit of gravy over it, or sometimes I make him home food, and then we give him scraps as well. I mean, I'm not a purist. Like dogs always were designed to scavenge, and they ate carrion after all. So, yeah.
That's really interesting. The what you just said. One of the guys who trained me in New Zealand, he always used to say, dogs are scavengers. Give them what you can, give them raw, but then give them whatever they would scavenge as well. It should be balanced.
My late dog Darling would eat absolutely anything, and I mean, she'd protect us. But if there was an old half-eaten sandwich versus someone trying to kill us, she'd go for the sandwich.
I think that's in common with the majority of dogs, isn't it? We've paid all this money to feed them all this lovely food, and actually they quite like a bit of cat poo and whatever else on their part.
Very like children, ungrateful.
I thought you were about eating the cat poo.
Possibly.
Oh my goodness. No, one of my dogs had a real thing for cat food. It used to drive me mad. Cat poo, even Bart used to kind of sniff it out.
if a dog is eating poo that you have some control over, if you put a bit of pineapple into the food of whatever animal, whether it's a cat or a dog that's eating it, that tends to put them off. Don't know why, but they don't like pineapple.
I find actually just feeding a raw food diet, dogs that are fed on processed food that are eating their own feces, just changing to a raw food diet, because the consistency of the poo is so different, that can often just kind of eliminate it on its own.
But also, you see, when they're eating the raw food, they're getting all the enzymes and amino acids and everything that they actually need, and all the bacteria. Whereas if they're eating a processed food, their body is probably saying, "Oh, I need," a bit like if you don't eat any fruit or vegetables, your body at a certain point says, "I must have something fresh." And I think that's what's happening with the dog. They're probably not intellectualizing it, though.
No.
No, brilliant. So I was just going to say, before Les gets back to her pigs, if people want any more information from you about honeys or raw feeding or whatever else, where can we signpost them to?
I think the website, which is www.honeysrealdogfood.com, and there's lots of resources there. We've done research, so there's copies of the research. We've got a book that I wrote it, not we. I wrote it a long time ago, I'd say now, and we update it from time to time. We give it away free. You can download it for free, or if you want a print copy, email in and we'll pop one in the post to you. It only takes about an hour to read, but it gives you the complete sort of background to raw feeding. It explains why your dog should be raw feeding, and then goes through the history of dog food, and then looks at different recipes and what dogs should be eating. And then there's a whole section on feeding poorly dogs. So it's a useful starting point. I mean, if you want to really get into it, again, if someone emails me, I can send them a long list of scientific papers and stuff. But for most people, it's a good start, and it kind of explains it. There's no footnotes. I hate footnotes in an ordinary book, but I can provide the footnotes separately if it's required.
Brilliant.
I really enjoyed it. I love that book. We give it on the nutrition course.
Oh, thank you, Les.
Yeah, no, it's such a good book. And I agree. I'd hate footnotes in books.
I think academic their purpose, a bit like peer-reviewed papers, but they are, they're tedious to read usually. But actually, that was I've probably written about 15 books, but that's the one that I think has sold the best under my own name. I used to ghostwrite books for other people, so if someone, you're never allowed to say who, but if someone like Richard Branson can't be bothered to write his own book, I'd be the sort of person that would do it. So leaving those aside, but the books I've written in my own name, the Little Honey's Natural Feeding Handbook, I think we've sold over 100,000 at this point and given away I don't know how many. So
it's a great book. It's just a really nice size to stick in your pocket.
Thank you.
I do like it. I didn't realize you were a ghostwriter.
Yeah, well, in a previous existence, yeah.
Oh, okay. It's like, damn, you could have helped me.
Yeah, absolutely. Done it all yourself. You hardly needed the help.
All done. I'm hoping to be finished in a couple of weeks. So, and then it'll be out there. Yeah. Ross?
If we're not doing cows, I'm done. I'm out of questions. I'm quite satisfied with the information that I've gained.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, no, I'm happy now. Well, I was just going to ask, would you have pigs now as pets? Like, would you ever have a Vietnamese potbelly pig? They're quite cute, aren't they? And quite small.
I probably would, yes. I love having animals around, so I'd like almost any animal. Snakes I'd probably draw the line at, and spiders, but almost everything else. Would you?
Would I have a pig? Yeah, I really like these little pygmy fainting dwarf goat things. They're like the little dwarfy goats, aren't they? But if you give them a fright, they fall over.
Oh, really?
Have you not seen them? They're tiny. They're about so big. Really, really cute looking. But I think they're called fainting goats. If they get a fright, their first response is just to fall over and lie on the side, and then they get up and carry on as if nothing's the matter.
Oh, brilliant. There must be YouTube videos.
There are lots of YouTube videos.
I'm sure Les will send you a few links.
No, I do. I like goats.
You can send me links to fainting goats.
I'll do that. No, they're brilliant. They're really funny to watch. They're just so cute. I do like goats.
Well, we used to have goats, but we had them they're good for clearing land, really, goats. So we they were useless for anything else. I mean, we weren't eating their meat or drinking their milk or anything. We just had them to clear brambles. They're fantastic for that.
You didn't drink them? You didn't drink the milk?
No, like, you don't get much milk from a goat, and you have to chase it all over the place to get it to cooperate. So, on the whole, no. It's quite interesting milking. We one of our farmers who we use for our butchers is a local chap called Johnny Ryder, and he only milks once a day, which is fascinating. He leaves all the young, because mostly in order to get the milk, I don't know how much you know about the dairy industry, so they take the little baby calves away, calves away. They're called bobby calves, and usually at 4 days, once the milk starts to come on, they'll take the calf away and generally slaughter it, and then they milk the cows twice a day. He leaves the calves with the mums and milks once a day, and he says his yield is exactly the same, that he's almost no loss of yield, but obviously he's got much happier, more content cows as a result.
Jonathan Cook does that as well. Yeah, he's indigo collar tags. That's how he does it as well, and he's very much into raw milk as well rather than processing it. Yeah.
Well, if you've got, there's no reason why not.
No, I think it's brilliant. We used to milk the goats straight into our coffees when we were kids.
Were you raised
the original frothy coffee?
New Zealand?
No, in Tyneside, the allotment where we used to keep the horses. In Bolden, he used to have goats and geese, as he had the geese as guard dogs, so to speak. And yeah, we would go in the winter and take a coffee and just milk the goats straight into our coffee, fish the hairs out.
Yeah, I don't think I've never really liked goat milk that much, so no loss.
No loss.
But I leaf milking a lot, which was, I don't know, I'm not sure how much of a relief it was for the farmers leaving me in time. There's certain things where I've always been amazed, Les, that anyone would allow me to do it. When we bought the first bandsaw for honeys, which is an incredibly dangerous bit of kit, I was amazed that no one sort of said, you're not really fit to have a bandsaw. And in my shooting days, when I was allowed a gun, I was amazed that anyone would allow me to have a gun. And by the kind of same sort of token, I'm amazed that any farmer would trust me to milk their cows, but it did happen.
Interesting. I do like, we used to take Callum to Fisher's Farm, which is it was a farm down in West Sussex, and like that they used to let the kids have a little go at milking and feed the goats, and it was lovely. So we had a shot at milking.
Yeah,
I like the way this has come full circle, isn't it? We started off with udders and
we ended with udders.
Udders.
Oh, dear.
Brilliant, thank you, Jonathan. It was so good to talk to you.
Well, listen, thank you for the opportunity. It was really nice to talk to both of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you
very much.
First guest.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Thanks for listening. It's not just gun dogs and not just guard dogs, but all things canine, as we hope you have discovered. Please like, share and subscribe, and help us spread a bit of common sense back into dog ownership. And a review wouldn't go amiss either. Catch up with Les and Ross again in about 14 days for more canine conversations. Until next time, stay well and enjoy your dogs. Any dog-related questions or topics, just drop an email to talk@cfba.uk or message us via facebook.com/Gundogs and Guard Dogs podcast.